Welcome back to part 3 of our exciting mini-series exploring the book The Feather Thief by Kirk Wallace Johnson. We've taken a deep dive into the book, moving through its chapters chronologically, and now we're focusing on one of the more fascinating sections, fly tying. This week we're thrilled to have a very special guest, Jason Weckstein, join us for a conversation about the intricacies of fly tying. Jason is not only an avid fly fisherman and fly tyer, but also a passionate ornithologist. His deep knowledge of both fly tying and birds makes him the perfect person to offer a fresh and ethical perspective on fly tying. While we've previously explored the darker side of fly tying in past episodes, this week we shift focus to highlight ethical fly tying practices. Jason's insights provide a deeper appreciation for the craft and its connection to the natural world. Jason is so much fun and has such great stories. I really think you'll find this one entertaining, and he's a great hang. Jason is an Associate Curator of Ornithology at the Academy of Natural Sciences at Drexel University, an Associate Professor in the Department of Biodiversity, Earth, and Environmental Science at Drexel University. Okay, go grab your binoculars and let's get into it. All right, well, welcome back, everyone. This is part 3 of our series on the Feather Thief, and we're really excited to have Jason joining us. Jason, is it Weckstein?
Yep, exactly.
Right? Okay,
hit it
to have
on the
Jason
mark.
Weckstein. All right, to have Jason Weckstein joining us. Jason, do you want to kind of give a little intro and tell us about yourself?
Yeah, I used to be at the Field Museum working with John and Shannon. I was a postdoc there, and then I kind of hung on for around a decade, actually. I was there for about a decade. As a staff scientist and worked on all kinds of projects with them. John and I have spent, many, many weeks, if not more than that, in the field together in Brazil, Malawi, bird watching in Chicago and Wisconsin. And then after 10 years there, I got a position here in Philadelphia. So I'm Curator of Ornithology at the Academy of Natural Sciences, which used to be the Academy of Natural Sciences of Philadelphia, a standalone museum. But then it joined forces with Drexel University. So it's now called the Academy of Natural Sciences of Drexel University. And I'm also a professor at the university. So I'm in the Department of Biodiversity, Earth, and Environmental Sciences there. So it's a joint position. Yeah. And I live at the museum like John and Shannon do, which is cool. So
Nice. And we're excited to have you on to talk because we've been doing this Feather Thief book, and we're talking a little bit about fly tying. And you said that you have. So I was curious, do you fly tie yourself? I know you said as a hobby you follow it, but
I do. This is my work desk right here, and right next to my work desk is a fly tying desk.
Oh, cool!
Very cool.
So Amanda is very jealous right now.
I am. I'm impressed. I am really impressed. Yeah. I was to say, Jason, do you belong to Trout Unlimited?
I don't belong to Trout Unlimited. I don't belong to any fishing clubs. There's actually even a local Philly, like a Philly Anglers Club. I just spend a lot of time fishing, as much as I can.
That's awesome.
That and birding. And when I'm fishing, I usually have my binoculars on.
Nice.
So
Good
tell me
combo.
you don't have $5 million worth of Academy specimens sitting.
I
just
do
out
not.
of
I
our
have no Academy
usual-
specimens. All of my specimens are either bought at a fly shop legally or are gotten from friends like Nate Rice, who is the collections manager, hunts. So I've gotten he's gone pheasant hunting, and I've gotten pheasant feathers from him, from the pheasant that he eats. I can use those to tie flies. Although you can buy pheasant. You can buy pheasant rumps and pheasant tails, and those are all legal game birds that can be sold in the fly fishing world.
So do you find yourself tying specific kinds of things? Are you trying to make them look like insects, or are you trying to make them look?
It's a variety
like
of things. So some things look like insects. I actually grabbed a couple. I mean, it may be really hard to see this. I don't know if the camera will work, but like little things like this. Believe it or not,
my.
this is
Tiny.
meant to imitate a little mayfly. Yeah, and Bailey's coming to say hi. Here's Bailey.
Nice. Hey, Bailey.
Oh, hey, Bailey.
Hey, Bailey. Wait, so did you tie that mayfly?
Yeah, yep. And that's
Very
made out of
nice.
synthetics. That thing. And that's meant to imitate a particular. There's a thing called a sulfur hatch that happens. I can't remember the genus, but this is the fun thing about fly fishing. There's a lot of natural history in it. it's a lot like birding. Like when I'm out there with my binoculars, I'm using them to look at birds, but I'm also sometimes looking to see what bugs are hatching on the water with my binoculars. So sometimes it's mayflies, sometimes it's little flies that are under the water. So like a fly like that floats on the surface, and you treat it with floating, and you drift it like a natural mayfly would drift when it hatches out of the water. And then there's some that that mimic the life stage when the mayflies fall back to the water to lay their eggs. That's called a spinner fall. And then there are aquatic stages of all these insects. And then of course there are fish and crayfish. So pretty much anything that lives out there that the fish might eat, even mice actually. So this is a mouse fly that I tied in. These you actually go out at night on the stream. So like I've gone up to the grayling area in Michigan, like where the Kirtland's warblers nest, and I have a stretch of stream that I know and I feel safe waiting by myself at night. I'm not going to fall into like a deep hole. And you literally wait at night casting this mouse, and you have to hear the fish come up for it, and you catch huge brown trout that way.
That's
cool.
You need to come and kill the mice in our house, and then you can take their bodies back and use them as real things, because these mice
some
are
of
making
my
me
own
lose
mice.
my ever-loving mind.
You have some models that you can
Yeah.
tie your flies after.
Yeah. And then there are weird things like this is actually an Atlantic salmon fly. So this is like what a modern Atlantic salmon fly would be like, not like those fancy ones. So this is made of deer hair and calf tail and chicken feathers. These are called hackle feathers. And you spin the deer hair onto this hook, and this is meant to imitate nothing. It just is a thing on the surface that I think kind of gets a reaction out of Atlantic salmon. And I've never actually fished for Atlantic salmon, but I tied these to fish for giant brook trout up in northern Canada, up in Ontario last summer. And I'm going back there this summer to do that. And,
So wait a minute, did it work?
it didn't work, but I didn't fish it very much. I ended up, they do work. It has a funny name too. It's called a dirty bomber. I don't know. Bombers are these things that that are made out of deer hair. There are a whole bunch of different bombers, but I guess it's a dirty bomber because it has all this fuzzy stuff off of it like that. And it just floats, and you kind of swing it through the water, and then these things come up and eat it. So it doesn't look like food. I think they're attacking it.
All right. So what's the best bird you've ever had fly fishing?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I've seen a lot of cool things fly fishing. Last summer I was up on the Magpie River in northern Ontario, like north of Lake Superior, and I had white-winged crossbills and evening grosbeaks and yellow-bellied flycatchers breeding, and lots and lots of warblers breeding up there. One of my favorite memories is actually in Yellowstone. This golden eagle flew overhead, and a few minutes later, a couple of ducks swam through the pool that I was on. And then a few minutes after that, I heard the ducks making a racket and looked over. And then the next pool below me, the golden eagle was standing on one of those ducks.
Oh,
It had grabbed it, and it was plucking it alive on the bank of the river.
Oh,
and
my
we just sat there
gosh.
looking at, I had my binoculars on. So we were passing the binoculars back and forth, watching this, insane predation event.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and out there I've seen wolves and stuff too. They're not birds, but it's still pretty cool to see wolves while you're out there fly fishing, and heard them howling up on the hills around me. Yeah.
That's amazing. Is that in Canada, you were saying?
That was in Yellowstone.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and I've seen harlequin ducks in Yellowstone actually while fly fishing. Lots of great stuff. They breed there on the rivers, but it's not that often that you see them. So kind of cool.
So with the flies then, are there like different ones you use depending on time of year? Like certain months you use certain ones? Like it kind of depends on what is hatching recently?
Yep. Time of year, place. So you kind of learn the stuff in the place that you're going. And, I know there's certain mayflies out west that when I'm out on a lake in the Rocky Mountains, there's a genus called Calibatus that I might see. If I'm, here in Philadelphia, I'm not going to see that. I'm going to see, a couple of other genera of mayflies. So I carry different boxes with me depending on where I'm going. And I fly fish for lots of things that are not, like I go to the coast here and fish for striped bass, so those are huge. Those can be, 20, 30 pounds, although I have not caught anything near that on my fly rod. And that's a lot of nocturnal. You're fishing at night and you're casting huge streamers that look like big fish, basically.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. You hear birds while you're doing that too. I've had like migrant birds flying over, and lots of clapper rails if you're in the salt marsh. I've never heard of black rail while I was in the salt marsh. That's what I'm waiting for.
That was one of the things in the book that like Kirk talked about, was like getting into all the different flies depending on like each month. And it made me realize like there's probably a ton of scientific value like to people like figuring that out. And it made me wonder, like, did fly fishermen figure stuff out like before? I mean, you know, it's like what kind of there's probably this plethora of knowledge that like somebody at one point was like, wow, you guys have figured all this out.
There definitely, I mean, there's a lot of natural history in it, which is kind of fun. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons that I got into it. I don't think there's a lot of natural history in the stuff that Rist was doing, right?
No.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a different story, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those don't look, you know, those are not meant to, those are just attractors, you know, they're kind of like that dirty bomber thing. They're just things that are colorful that like make the fish, you know, those fish I don't think are really actively feeding when they're coming up the river. So they just go after some brightly colored thing that makes them angry.
And
Yeah.
at the same time, I mean, a lot of those designs go back 150, 200 years.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
I
Yep.
view it as a reaction, men's reaction to women's hats taking off and not wanting to be left behind without, you know, the fancy feathers and what they were doing. So they couldn't have women outpace them in a fashion sense, quote unquote. But yeah, so
it's really
have
mind-boggling
you
to
met
leave
these people?
You know, I have not. I'm not going to say where it was, but I was invited to another museum by a museum president, not our museum, for a feather thief kind of evening. And this was supposed to happen right before the COVID pandemic happened. And he was interested in having me come because he had heard that I was a fly fisherman and I was a museum curator. So he thought I could sort of talk about some of this stuff. And he was going to have people there demoing fly tying. And I said, I'll do it as long as none of those people are using anything like this, you know, like, and then of course it ended up getting canceled. And I have a feeling some of the people use that kind of stuff, you know. I don't know anyone that does, but on the web, I see it, you know, every so often I'll be on a fly fishing Facebook group. And, you know, I told Shannon about this. There was a fly fishing Facebook group and someone was sort of posting pictures of all these flies that they had tied. And then right there is this beautiful channel-billed toucan, my favorite subspecies, Rhamphastus vitellinus rel. John's seen many with me and been on trips when we're working on these things. It's a beautiful specimen of this thing, like perfect condition. It had to be from a museum collection, maybe recent. I mean, it wasn't like a typical deformed old specimen. It was in really good shape. So it was stolen from somewhere. It had to be, you know, or sold from somewhere. You know, I'm not sure everything is stolen. I think sometimes things get sold because no one cares about them, you know, and that's also a crime, right?
I mean, I think there are probably a few Rhamphastus toucans in captivity, so I guess maybe there's a possibility it died
Could
that
be.
way.
It was a perfect round skin, though. You know, it wasn't like it was a flat skin. You know, like the pheasant rumps that I have, those are just flat skins. You know, they're not stuffed. And anything that you would buy, like chicken feathers, it's just flat skin that's, you know, sometimes been tanned or, you know, depending.
Did it have cotton eyes, Jason?
Yeah, it had
Yeah.
cotton eyes. I mean, it was a
telltale
round skin.
sign.
Yeah, it was prepared by an ornithologist that knew what they were doing. I mean, and it was a good-looking skin. So it just, you know, you start looking back at old historical stuff, and the skins are just not as nice as the more modern ones. That, you know, more modern ones are always built better on average. You know, we've learned a lot over centuries how to, you know, make them last, and this looked like it was a good skin, you know. So I was like, in it, you know, people get on and they'll say, oh, that's illegal. You can't have this. You can't have that. I don't know if it does any good on these forums. You know, you'll hear people say, you know, they found a heron feather or a blue jay feather and they're going to put it in their fly. And, you know, and I shake
illegal.
my head because, well, that's absolutely illegal, right? You know, migratory in the United States, you are not, you cannot sell a blue jay. I mean, this is the reason that, you know, if you watch like television commercials that have birds in them, they don't have native birds. They have pied crow or something like that, because those can be kept by captive, you know, like private individuals that have companies that train animals. but they can't have an American crow or a common raven, because those are protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act.
Oh, wow.
And all you have
Yeah.
to do is read the beginning of this book to understand why those laws needed to be put in place.
Yeah.
And I don't think people have changed that much, so it wouldn't take much for things like that to kind of circle back into some form of popularity in fashion or art outside of Native peoples who, they legitimately use these things in their cultural practices. And even the tribes are getting material for these things in more sustainable ways, whether that's getting feathers from us that are part of what is discarded when we turn a bird into a skeleton, or picking them up off the forest floor. So it is not legal for people to possess these things.
And also golden eagles and bald eagles are actually all, it's very seldom that museums actually get permits to be able to bring new bald eagles and golden eagles. Those go to the Native American community for their ceremonial purposes. So, and those are like road kills and things like that. So that's, a good way to use those.
I still am absolutely mystified, though, for instance, how somebody even 150 years ago came up with the idea that the only feather you needed for some sort of design was the throat patch of a red-ruffed fruit.
Exactly. It's mind-boggling. Like, why do you need a red, what is it? Like, it's mind-boggling to even think that kind of material was so commonly available. But I'm guessing, especially in Europe is very different when it comes to fishing than North America. Like, if you go to England to go fly fishing, you're really on private land. You have to pay a lot of money. It's not like sort of like here it's public land.
Rich person's thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think these were wealthy people who could afford to buy these fancy bird skins to tie these fancy flies.
They bought the land to keep regular people out.
Yes.
So that was pretty clear in the book too, that the history of how this land became private, and for that particular purpose. It wasn't for other purposes. It was the lands were being bought by rivers specifically to maintain the elite status of fly fishermen and access to the water. Once people could travel, they could get there, and that was not going to fly for.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky in the United States and Canada that we have all this public land that we can go enjoy in lots of different ways, whether it's bird watching or fishing or hiking or
hunting.
Hunting. Other places don't necessarily have that.
Although I'd never seen a posted sign till I moved to Louisiana. I didn't even know what it meant until someone told me that I needed to get off of the land.
Yeah, I had that happen doing a Christmas bird count in Louisiana. We weren't even on the land. We were just we were walking around on a road, and somebody said, "My daddy owns that property. We're hunting out there."
And the person could have had a gun in their truck when they came over and told you that too.
Definitely
which was
did.
Not unusual. Because as soon as someone said "get off the land," the next thing was you could get yourself shot. I'm Canadian. We don't do that. That's not a thing. So I did not know that what posted meant. I didn't know that there would be such a strong reaction. The Crown owns so much of the land, at least in British Columbia, that I really just didn't think about it.
Well, Canada's so huge. There's just vast amounts of public land. Yeah.
So I have a question going back to the red-ruffed fruit crow. So really, how different does that red feather look than a dyed chicken feather, or I don't, is it?
It's
like
iridescent.
It's
iridescent more. So, because it's I think that's structural coloration versus pigment. I'm not 100% sure, but the ones I've seen them a few times in southeastern Brazil and obviously looked at specimens. So but I guarantee that's not going to affect your fishing success.
Right.
So one of the things that caught my attention was that Kirk Johnson talks about Rist looking at them and emphasizes. So it's a kind of incredible distribution. This is a bird has this really separated distribution with populations in the mountains of the northern Andes in Colombia and then down in Atlantic forest. and so there's geographic variation. And Kirk mentions the fact that Rist is looking at the different subspecies and making note of what he's getting, and they're slightly different in their throat color. And
wow.
All I can think of when I see that is some person saying, look, this was tied with the subspecies that comes from Colombia. And I'm like, that's absolutely crazy.
Yep. That is crazy.
So RJ, is it crab with a C or crab with a K for your sushi?
Wait, what's that?
I mean, is it crab with a C, the real crab, or crab with a K, the fake crab, where it's fish being turned into crab? So, I mean, it's the same kind of idea.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing is, I think these people, these folks like Rist, it's sort of like, humans like things that are rare for some reason, right? It's like value goes up when it's rare. And so I think that's part of it. It's like this rare, unique thing. It's almost more of an art form, I think, than it is, and I mean, it's arts and crafts for me too, right? I have, you would die if you saw the number of flies that are sitting on my desk. When I go with a bunch of friends, no one buys flies and they don't tie their own flies. I bring them for everybody, basically.
Oh,
that goes with the crew.
You're a good friend.
Yeah. But I mean, I like doing, for me, it's like kind of meditative and relaxing. And it's like my little arts and crafts project, especially when I can't go out fishing, in the evening before I go to bed. I'll tie a couple flies, if I have time.
Well, it would have stayed kind of an art form if it weren't for eBay and the internet, right?
Yes.
Because that enabled people from all over the world to get them. And then he shipped them all over the world, too, once he bought his, 1,500 baggies or whatever he bought. So, that connections that the internet can make for good in conserving things can also, in the wrong hands, be
and it
really
seems like
terrible.
eBay is not good about controlling these things, right? They
Even
just let
now.
it happen. Yeah, because you can see weird stuff. I mean, every time I've looked, I've seen strange things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you active online looking for things when this was going on? Were you looking at fly tying websites at all when?
Honestly, fly tying. So I mean, I tied flies as a kid a bit. And even when I was living in Chicago, I was just a bit. I would only tie some small these streamers called woolly buggers. They're very simple. They use marabou, but it's not marabou from marabou storks. It's marabou. It's kind of under feathers from turkeys. So it's really fluffy stuff. So really simple flies, basically. And then when I moved here, one or two trips into Yellowstone, I was like, I think I could tie those things. They look simple enough. And I started learning to tie more and more. And I got more into the natural history and knowing what mayflies were hatching when. And so I wasn't doing it when this first came out, I don't think, when this first happened.
Some of these ties are incredibly beautiful.
Oh yeah, they're crazy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it is an art form. I get that, and I can respect that because they really are beautiful. The parts that I have trouble with are deciding that museums don't get to keep all these specimens because they don't need them, they don't use them, they're tucked away forever, and they need to.
Yes, and that's something. Again, I'm not going to name a name, but I once gave a behind-the-scenes tour to somebody who happened to be someone who did have a private collection, not here in the United States, outside the United States. And he made the statement that what happened at the British Museum, basically they couldn't take care of their own specimens properly. They'd be safer at his house. And the first thing that went through my mind was, oh my God, I'm glad there are locks on our cases.
Yeah.
Well, there are locks on the Field Museum cases for just that reason.
I remember. Yep. I used to have a key.
Yeah. Actually, the keys are super hard to copy, so we have hundreds of keys that don't work.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, you have to go to one locksmith with our collections manager Tom Noski to get them done properly. Otherwise, the 100 keys don't work.
Oh, geez.
But yeah, we keep them because our specimens are out in the open more than I imagine at the British Museum. They're in a hallway where anybody walking by can go. So they're locked because of fears or maybe actual thefts. I'm not sure about the kind of museum lore of that story.
Well, they're not 40 kilometers outside of London on a estate with no other buildings around either. I mean, this is the story of how this happened and why has a lot to do with where the British Museum is, the bird collection out at Tring, and it sounds like there's a very real possibility that it may be moved in the next 5 to 10 years.
I mean, the amazing thing is, I think this is why you have to have people at these places, right? Like people opening cases regularly. I mean, for lots of reasons. You want to make sure you don't have bugs eating the specimens, or termites. I mean, in places where there are termites come in and destroy things.
Or water, because you can
water.
Have. We had a horrible thing in the museum that happened when one of the air conditioning kind of.
I think I was there when that happened. Yeah.
It overflowed, and we thought we had cleaned up the water, which was bad enough, but it turns out the cases in that room have a false bottom. And so we had cleaned everything out, and Mary Hennon had spent all of this time, painstakingly cleaning every specimen in these cases. It took dozens and dozens of hours. And then it all was wet inside again because the water had flown into the false bottom. And so there was still like an inch or two of water in the false bottom of the cases. So water is bad.
Oh yeah, you get fungus growing on the skins and stuff from the humidity. Lots of bad things could happen from that.
I mean, basically, she had to go over every specimen with a cotton swab with alcohol on it.
Wow.
To kill all the spores and get rid of them all off the specimens so that they didn't just mold and rot. It was terrible.
But they didn't mold and rot, and that's thing about having the people.
Yeah.
So, Jason, I was wondering, when you are on these online forums and stuff, are you mostly talking to other?
I actually am not on online forums. I'm on Facebook groups.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Facebook groups. Are they all people who fish, or are there people who just tie for the art of tying?
I am not on any. There are a few that are like, I actually just got onto a salmon fly one because I was curious like a few weeks ago, and I haven't seen anything insane on it yet. On most of the ones I'm on, it's people that tie for fishing. Yeah.
Okay.
I have not run into really anybody that doesn't tie for fishing.
Okay.
And Kirk talks about this in the book, that a lot of these folks that are really hardcore about this are actually on the dark web and places that are really hard to get into.
Yeah.
I mean, did you know before this happened that there was a dark web where fly ties were selling for this kind of money? I mean, it's unbelievable. I had no idea. And I actually looked at a few Reddit threads today associated with, in particular, associated with women in the fly tying community. I ended up in a few of these Reddit threads that were shockingly misogynistic, even today, right?
And yeah, I think the bulk. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
There wasn't enough chastising of some of these pretty outmoded understanding of women, what they're good at and what they're not good at.
Yeah, I mean, they're famous. There are famous women fly fishers. Guides. Certainly, they are in the minority.
There are famous women who tie flies, and the reason it's rare is because all the men know their names. There's just because there's so few of them that it seemed that everybody, everywhere I looked, they all knew like the top 3 person, and one of them died not too long ago, and passed her knowledge on to someone who's imitating. So there is a.
I actually have friends down the street that have a daughter that likes to birdwatch and fly fish, and she ties flies, and she wrote letters to that woman. She's I'm spacing on the name right now. She was a famous fly caster.
Yeah.
She and her husband own like a lodge in the Catskills of New York, and And this little girl down the street got, letters. They were exchanging letters back and forth.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
how cool.
Yeah, really
That's
cool.
awesome.
Well, it's like birding. I mean, there aren't anywhere near as many women in birding as there are men.
But interestingly, I think that starts at a really young age. I don't know if that's the same for fly. I mean, there are way more women who are in the fishing realm these days. I mean, the statistics that some of the companies put out say that it's like 31% of the fly fisher people are women now. But I wonder when the kind of yen for tying flies kind of comes, whether that's really early, the way boys seem to be more attracted to bird watching really early.
I think it varies. I think it varies. Some, I mean, I got a fly rod as a gift when I was 13, and it was a bar mitzvah present, believe it or not.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, from my dad's
Gift.
cousin, and it was something I always wanted to do. And sure enough, I got this great present, and it's definitely sent me down into this world of just loving fly fishing. But my dad just happened to have a vise that he used for something else, which is what you use to hold the hooks when you tie. It was a cruddy vise, but I used it for years. Even until I got here, I didn't buy a more expensive vise until a few years ago. But you hear about kids getting into it early, like this friend down the street who has, 2 boys and a girl. They all the kids, he just throws a bag of feathers on the table and has them have fun making creative things.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
How long does it take generally to tie a fly, like start to finish, if you're really going to go all out? And
It varies. That little one that I showed you, a few minutes I can make one of those. So I can just, I throw a bunch of hooks on a little magnet, and then I just sit there and I listen to a podcast or watch a video or watch a show, and I just sit there and tie. But some of the bigger ones they can take an hour or two. I mean, these salmon flies take a long time. I don't know. I mean, I think sometimes over days, because it's like meticulous. They don't want to wrap too much. It'll mess things up. So,
I mean, they are it's like pottery and jewelry all combined at the same time.
Yeah, and
each
there
one
are
is individual and unique, and
there are you learn how to do certain things, like when you wrap the thread, it pulls the materials around the side of the hook, so you have to learn how to wrap in a way that doesn't do that. So you learn how to control. It's called thread control. You learn thread control, and you use a little tool called a bobbin that holds the thread. There are all kinds of different threads. It's a rabbit hole.
I was going to say, I think at some point we should do a whole show on preparing specimens of birds.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Because
that would be cool.
It's absolutely similar in terms of...
Yeah, it's true. That's true. Because everyone has their own little tricks for how to do different things. I remember when I went with Ben Marks, who's collections manager with John and Shannon at the Field Museum, my first trip to Africa was to Ghana, and we met up with Ben. I was at LSU at the time as a graduate student. We met up with Ben at the airport, and the funny thing is we were all a bunch of cocky LSUers. We all thought we're the best ornithologists in the world. Who's going to know more than us, because LSU is a great, we all went to LSU, John, Shannon, and I, and it's produced a lot of ornithologists. But we get there, and, Ben was really experienced in the field. He'd been with Dave Willard in the field and Tom Nosky in the field. He was a really good preparator, still is. And I learned a lot of tricks, and I learned a lot, how to pick up the pace at which I could prepare a specimen. I could never do it as fast as Ben. Still can't.
That's awesome. So, Jason, who taught you how to tie flies? And
well, pretty much I taught myself. Yeah, I had books initially. Now you can just watch YouTube videos. So, all of my recent fly tying is from watching YouTube videos. Yeah, and it's fantastic.
Do you have some you'd never ever cast with that you're so attached to them or fond of them that you'd never do that with?
I love catching fish on my own flies. In fact, I have flies that I bought before I tied my own. And if I opened up my box and I was like, okay, should I use that one or that one? I'd always choose the one that I tied.
Yeah.
It's just much more fun,
awesome.
to catch something on the thing you made.
Yeah. That's so cool.
And it's even
have you altered? Oh, Have you like altered your approach? Like you notice something works better if you do it a certain way, and like so next time you go out you do it that way? Or
yeah, sometimes like I learn like different ways of doing things from different people, and yeah.
Cool.
See, I was thinking that this is one of these examples where you can way overthink things too. So like
it's a
like,
fish.
Exactly. It's
got a brain about that big. But there have been plenty of times
you need a red-roofed fruit crow.
Yeah, exactly. Damn, if I only had the red.
Apparently.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been times I've watched a fish eating, a giant fish, and there's nothing that I can do to get it to eat the fly that I'm casting it, even though I can see the insects that it's eating.
Yes.
And it can be frustrating, but it's also fun. It's fun to like sit there and try to get that fish,
Yes. That's Jason, I always tell RJ like my favorite thing to do was just sight fish. Like we lived in Colorado and
oh cool.
The streams are so clear, and that's how I would usually like try to find where to go. Well, people would tell me where to go, and then I to select my spot. I would try to sight fish, but like one of the like most humbling and hilarious things is watching like a fish completely ignore what you're doing.
Yep.
Like watch it see what you have and pass it by, or put it in its mouth and take it
and
out.
Spit it out. Or you watch it, like especially out there, I mean, but it happens anywhere. It's called a refusal. You'll watch the fish come up like this. It'll look at your fly and then go right back down. And you're like, it's a giant thing, and you're watching this thing.
It's total rejection.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
That's true.
Yeah.
They're smart, but yeah.
So for a kid growing up in Arizona, what I'm remembering is putting corn on hooks and dropping it over the side of the dock and watching the bluegill look at it.
Yep.
That's the best. That is the best.
Bluegill are fun on the fly rod, actually. They're really fun.
Oh, really?
Yep. They fight hard for their little...
What kind of fly?
Oh, you could catch them on all kinds of things. Little streamers that look like a little fish or little nymphs.
Corn-shaped ones?
Yeah, you could probably do that, too.
A mini marshmallow-looking fly, yeah. Yeah.
There are these flies called mop flies. Like the microfiber mops that you buy? There are those, the little microfiber, I don't even know what you call them, but they cut those off and you put them on the back of a hook with a little bead on the hooks, and trout love them. They're like junk flies,
That's awesome.
Yeah. Some people don't like that, because it's sort of like, but it works.
Not pure enough.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of not purist.
Is that like using spinners?
Yeah, it's
spoons or whatever those are.
Almost as bad as that.
Like, we've now reached the end of my knowledge of fishing.
Oh, we reached that a long time ago for me.
Yeah, the only thing I fished with is night crawlers, so.
That's fun. That's fun, though.
Yeah. Oh, Bailey, come here.
Yeah. I wouldn't put things on a hook, so that was the end for me.
Oh.
I'm going to just step away and give him a treat.
Okay.
All right.
He's been so good.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah, for my dad, if you weren't going to bait the hook, that was it for you.
You weren't going to fish.
You had to bait your own.
I'm not going to do it for you. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing it, so that's the end.
So you were out. All right.
Yeah. Where's the speedboat so I can go water skiing? This fishing thing is done. I'm done with the fishing.
Yeah, you lived in BC, which is like, probably spectacular fishing.
Prime territory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, my dad said if you can't bait your hook, you're not fishing, because I'm not baiting your hook for you, and I'm not taking the fish off the hook for you either. And I wasn't going to do either one of those things. So, but certainly my aunts and uncles, I have lots of people in my family who fish, but not me.
Yeah.
So you're saying we don't have to go out and get a vise and
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Only for the heads of people who want to steal specimens from our collections.
Yes,
put them in a vise.
That's going to have to be a bigger one.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Jason, do you think your institution would want to keep it really private because of embarrassment, kind of the way the British Museum, the approach they kind of took?
Boy, I don't know. It is pretty embarrassing. I do hope that, like, because your collection and our collection are sort of deeper inside of a building, it may be harder for people to do what they did there, or what Riss did there. I do think specimens have been stolen from lots of collections over the years. In some cases they've been returned, usually without their tags. Like, I think University of Michigan had that happen with birds of paradise. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was able to get them back. Yeah, I don't know.
Who took them?
I don't know. I don't know the history of it.
See, there's a interesting argument for digitization from the perspective of keeping track of things, for sure.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Digitization, and like, one of the things we found out is not all of our specimens are in our database. We don't know why. Our collection was the first bird collection ever databased, apparently. And they basically had a bunch of typists typing the data in to some simple database. So I think somehow they missed stuff. So we've actually been doing a project where we have folks basically going through the collection and rehandling everything, and also capturing the data fields that weren't captured the first time around in the early stuff. Now everything is captured for modern material, but way back when, that stuff, it was mostly locality, date, the basic fields.
So RJ and Amanda, so the collection at the Academy is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, in North America. And so it's got specimens collected by Audubon and so just some of the earliest North American specimens.
Yeah, we have 300 specimens from Audubon. We have
oh my gosh.
We have a few Wallace specimens. We have things like, Stephen's Island wren. That was mostly material that was traded at times from other museums, like from American Museum. What's cool is we have things like the type specimen for broadwing hawk. And my favorite thing about that specimen, so the type specimen is the specimen used to define what that species is in the original description. And that was a bird that was described by Alexander Wilson here in Philadelphia. And he collected that bird at Bartram's Garden, which is, it was John Bartram's estate, which was kind of outside of the city, but it's in the city now, and it's right along the river. And it's now like a park, and it's a place that like birders go, it's a hardcore birding. I just went and saw painted bunting there a few weeks, like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
And the type specimen for broadwing hawk, this super common North American bird, came from that spot. Pretty weird.
Wow. So RJ and Amanda, when you came over for dinner the other night, up on the mantle, those black and white kind of ink drawings are by Bartram.
Oh, you have some Bartram. Oh, cool.
So cool.
Bob Zink gave them to us for a wedding present.
Oh, cool.
It's amazing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's funny. Before I moved here, I did not realize sort of the depth of ornithological history in this city. And actually, one of my PhD students, Matt Halley, he's as much a historian as he is an ornithologist. So he really opened my eyes. And also Nate Rice is really into the history stuff too. So both of them really opened my eyes to sort of the depth of ornithological history here in town. Alexander Wilson's buried here in Philadelphia. Crazy
means the
stuff
birds
like
of North America started there.
Yep.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
historically really important.
Yeah.
So, and maybe these things are all accumulated and protected and advanced at Cornell, but they often started elsewhere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, you were talking about birds of North America accounts. Like the modern ones.
The other birds of North America too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The other birds of North America too. But yeah, the birds of North America accounts. Yeah, exactly. Like Birds of the World online. I guess part of it started at Field Museum with Tom, right? And then part of it started here with Birds of North America because Tom Schulenberg was doing. He had all this Peru data, right? From the Birds of Peru book that sort of led to neotropical birds online, and then ultimately those things all came together.
Thanks everyone for listening. We had such a great time with Jason that we ran long and ended up chopping the interview into 2 parts. We'll release part 2 next week. Sorry for the abrupt stop, but we promise we've got a ton of fun stuff saved for next week. Reminder, if you have a question for us, you can reach us at podcast.birdsofafeather@gmail.com. If you're enjoying this, please leave us a review and share this with someone who you think would enjoy it. We really would appreciate it. All right, see you all next week. Love you all.